There we go. And Dave Del Torto, and Greg Broiles, who is Michaelis, but if he wants to say anything, I'm sure you'll hear it. And I recruited these guys mostly because they're either CypherPunks, which some of you are already, I know, but we're doing the intro stuff this morning, or MCIP people, or former MCIP people, and mostly currently Mac crypto people, and they're going to tell you what all that means. They're also going to tell you, the official title of this is a sort of short history, a thumbnail history of cryptography activism, not cryptography per se, on the Mac. So without further ado, there they are.
Okay, crypto activism on the Mac. Unfortunately, at least from where I'm standing, a lot of the crypto activism that's been out there in the world has treated the Mac kind of like an afterthought. A lot of it's happened on Unix, a lot of it's happened on Windows, and some has happened on the Mac. There have been a lot of, probably the most of the activity has come on to additions to PGP. There's a PGP control panel. Fortunately for all of us, the person who did the PGP port to the Macintosh, who unfortunately I don't know his name.
Zbigniew Fiodorovsky.
Thank you. Included Apple event support.
We can call him Zig for short.
In Mac PGP, which opened the doors to remote control of PGP by other programs. There is, let's see, just off the top of my head, there's the Mac PGP control panel. There's a toolbar that goes in old versions of Eudora to add signing and encrypting. The newest version of Eudora contains the ability to write plugins that modify the text on the way in and the way out, and there is a PGP plugin for Eudora 3 that supports both signing and encryption.
Doesn't officially exist yet.
Okay, it doesn't officially exist on my machine either.
It hasn't officially existed for about 8 months.
Yeah, there you go. There's a AppleScript called an AppleScript application called Encryptlet, which is gives a drag and drop interface to Mac PGP. There are several other ones that I'm sliding here. Chainmail, thank you.
Cryptdisk.
Cryptdisk, which were as well.
Price.
I was thinking of the PGP add-ons. There's a couple more that I'm skipping, and then.
But all of this stuff happened on MCIP, though, right? I mean, people talked about them.
You want to jump in here? I came into MCIP kind of late. Last year or so.
Mid '94, late '94, I think it was the first hint of MCIP, which is Macintosh Cryptography Interface Project. Basically, all the people who had seen a copy of Mac PGP and Zig's first port was, kind of ugly looking, I hate to say. No offense, Phil. But it was basically a port of the DOS thing with a console window, and it was pretty nasty. And MCIP was a group of interested parties who got together with the express purpose of designing better interfaces for doing cryptography on the Mac, and it grew, and we found out that a lot of the people involved in the group were interested in writing little apps or scripts or kits like Mac PGP Kit, and extending the functionality of the basic Mac PGP app so that it could be used by other applications, mailers, etc. That's the nutshell history. It ceased to exist not too long ago, a few months ago, like 3-4 months ago, simply because the future of this sort of thing, and I'll talk about this in a minute, seems to be moving possibly away from that kind of scripting and into APIs and and integrated crypto tools and applications. So everybody kind of sort of decided to sit back and watch what happened, partly because of the Eudora EMS API, the Extended Messaging Services API, which I can tell you about now, and various tools like that for other applications. The possibility exists for plugins to do crypto in Netscape, et cetera. So people kind of, put the list on hold, and
Step away from it.
now we're, oh yeah, it's feeding back, isn't it? Sorry, I wondered why it was nasty. So now the activity has shifted over to the list that Vinny and Bob have been running called Mac Crypto, and you can subscribe to that. And most of the people from MCIP are on there now. So.
Okay. Besides the plugins to or the alternate ways of driving Mac PGP, there have been several real nice crypto programs on the Mac, Mac specific. Probably the most famous is CryptDisk. Gives you encrypted disk partitions or volumes. I saw Will earlier, and now I don't see him. But he wrote it. It works well. Latest version is 1.2.1?
1.1.2, I think.
1.1.2, sorry.
I may be wrong.
We will make sure that if Bob doesn't have a URL on his webpage, that he does soon. Or you can just fire up AltaVista and look for CryptDisk. Also, there's a takeoff on John Norsted's popular Newswatcher program called YA Newswatcher that supports posting of articles and binaries through the anonymous remailer network automatically. Basically, you say, I want to post this anonymously, and pick a few remailers, and it routes them through the encrypting as need be. And that's most of the Macintosh crypto software that I'm aware of. You want to jump in with some more?
Those are the biggest and the brightest.
As long as we're talking about Mac crypto activism, Bob mentioned earlier, or actually Jose mentioned earlier, that in fact Apple was into crypto a long time ago with the PowerTalk system, and it was it had a lot of good ideas in it, and unfortunately, I mean, there are lots of reasons why PowerTalk is no longer with us, but I think the biggest one is that they picked a bunch of protocols that got blindsided by SMTP and POP, basically, for all their mail transport. But the digital signature stuff in PowerTalk, it was a good way to solve a lot of problems. Unfortunately, it never caught on. There was never any support outside of the software. For example, nobody was willing to take signed files as verbatim, and it's all kind of fallen by the wayside. They also did, as part of PowerTalk, ASDSP, which was an encrypted stream protocol built into various versions of AppleTalk for secure transactions over an AppleTalk network. Go ahead.
I'm going to jump in for a minute here. I'm not entirely sure why Bob asked me to come talk. Maybe I just talked too much on the list. I've been a CypherPunks subscriber for a long time, and I've got some grasp of what people talk about on this list. He just asked me yesterday afternoon, so I've been trying to figure out while we're standing up here what it is that I should talk about. And it occurs to me there are a few applications, a few things that the CypherPunks have come up with that don't have good Mac support and could use it. One of the first things that came out as a CypherPunks project, I want to clarify, CypherPunks is a mailing list, it's not a group. It's more like a philosophy or an idea, and it's a place to talk about that idea. One of the first things that came out was what are called the CypherPunks anonymous remailers. These are different from the PNet, I'm not sure how to say it, a non-PNet FI remailer, in that they don't provide you a persistent identity, and they don't keep a database of those identities.
Now, the downside is you can't reply to something you get through a CypherPunk remailer. The upside is that database can't be subpoenaed because it doesn't exist. I don't know if people have heard, but PNet has gone down. It's no longer available because of this threat of subpoena. So CypherPunks remailers in the last few days have become more important. And
To the Church of Scientology.
right. So I'm not sure, I'm not aware of a Mac remailer. I don't think that there is one. They're pretty simple. All they do is they take an incoming mail message, they strip off every header except for the subject line. They usually strip off an identifiable signature if there is one, and it remails it. They were originally written as shell scripts or Perl scripts to be run inside a Unix shell, but people are moving towards SMTP and POP, and people don't do shell accounts anymore. The recent Dr. Dobbs journal had an article on doing SMTP and POP mail using Java, and the article had sample code which gives you the primitives that you would need to write a CypherPunks remailer. So that's a pretty good project that's waiting for somebody to do it.
What issue?
Boy, I'm sorry, I'm in the middle of moving. I picked it up at a bookstore. I bought it probably 3 weeks ago, so.
So a current one.
Yeah.
This month's, last month's. October,
So-
September, I suspect.
My understanding is that Eric Hughes is the guy who wrote the first remailer in Perl. And as I understand it, he learned Perl on Saturday and wrote the remailer on Sunday. So it's a real simple application. Another tool that's useful on the Windows side is called Private Idaho. And what that is it's a client, like Marshall mentioned, that'll make using the remailers easier because their syntax isn't necessarily very straightforward. They're not especially user-friendly, and that's kept a lot of people from using them. What Private Idaho does is it'll build a nested remailer message. One of the ways that remailers work is you don't send through one, you send through 3 or 4 or 5. The idea being that the first one knows who you are, the last one knows who the target of the message is, but if they don't collude and nobody in the middle cheats, you can't put that all together and figure out who's talking to who. So you've got resistance to traffic analysis. But the problem is you've got to build this nested chain of remail to here, remail to here, remail to here. And that's a pain in the ass. People don't want to do it.
There's, and I can't remember the name of it's a scripting program, and I can't remember the name of it, but somebody wrote a scripting program, that wrote an application that does this for the Mac, and I used it for a while, but it sort of hurts in Eudora 3.0, and you know what I'm talking about.
Is that chainmail?
No, it's something else. It's written, I'm trying to remember the name of the scripting. What is it? Yeah, no, it's not. It's not Frontier. That's the reason why I can't remember it. Damn. I want to. It's not. No. And you guys keep throwing stuff at me. It's not going to work. I'll remember it later and say something. But there's a bunch of guys who write buttons for this program because it's got buttons. It's pretty graphical. One click. It's a bunch of one-click macros that will do the nesting. It will go out and get all of the remailer signatures and do the nesting and all that stuff. And it worked very well until the new version of Eudora. And the guy who's working on it was waiting for things to sort of stabilize, which they should have.
They should have.
But we haven't
I know who
seen
you're
it
talking about.
yet come back. And it's all running on scripts, and that's really the problem here is you have to rely on scripts and driving PGP. And the only application out there that doesn't use scripts to do what PGP does is something called SafeMail, which I use now, though it's got a few problems. Like it writes a cache file to the disk, which is bad for it, which they say they're going to fix.
And if it crashes in the middle, it doesn't delete it.
Anyway, the point is that there's lots of ways to sort of get around having to call PGP. Unfortunately, it involves writing actual code.
Okay, so anyway, my thought is that if somebody wants to work on that, that'd be a neat project. As far as I can tell, there isn't a good, strong, well-known one for the Mac that's available. And the remailers are a good tool, and it would be nice if people could use them.
And it would be really great if it was what remailers really need to be.
Go ahead. Yeah, if there were several hundreds of them or a couple thousand of them scattered across, say, 40 or 50 countries, then life would be good instead of 20 in 3 countries. Because if you chain your mail through the remailer, a remailer chain that's longer than say about three remailers, the only way that actually to back up, it doesn't really matter if one of the remailers is compromised or is even run by the NSA. As long as it's not the first one, as long as it's not the last one, basically they can't find out anything about this message except it went through.
And Marshall's actually outlining something that's very important, and that is the last remailer is always the first one to get the rubber doesn't count. So that's still a problem that needs to be solved. I don't know how to begin to even think about it.
Just change the subject a little. The third thing I thought I'd mention is a thing that the CypherPunks have talked about. As far as I can tell, nobody's really implemented it yet. It's called a dining cryptographer's net. And what that is it takes advantage of a protocol known as the dining cryptographer's protocol, which is a way by which many people, a group of people, can arrange themselves in a conceptual ring. And by using this ring, they can pass tokens, single bits of data around the ring. Some people change it at the right time, some people don't change it. And by doing this, they can create a message which comes out of that circle and which is available, but nobody can tell. None of the people in the ring, except the person who sent the message, know who sent it. So it's possible to create mathematically secure sender anonymity, to the level of this ring. And if you get the ring big enough, you really can't tell who sent that message. So if you're concerned about sender anonymity, it's a neat protocol to know about. It's a neat thing to work on. As far as I can tell, nobody's implemented it in a user-friendly, useful way. It's something people have talked about, nobody's done. So if you're looking for a project, I think that might be a good one.
You have a reference for it.
Applied crypto. So that and list messages is how I learned about it. Frankly, I don't remember the math well enough to do it for you right now. If I was going to write it, that's where I'd go.
Let me jump in here for just a minute. For people who aren't familiar with the campus here, across the street on Infinite Loop, there is a branch of computer literacy, which is a fine resource at full list price for almost any computer book or pamphlet or whatever that you might want to purchase. I even saw some of Friedman's how to cryptanalyze papers that have been recently declassified in one of the computer literacy stores, the one on North First Street rather than the one here.
Mm-hmm. The other thing is that there are exactly 3 copies.
No,
two copies of Applied Crypto at the company store, the Apple company store. Get them all.
Another resource for crypto books that I have found is very good is Amazon Books. They're on the web. They will order stuff from publishers for you. They're not the quickest people in the world. When they order stuff directly from publishers, it can take 6 weeks to 2 months to get them.
That's because they have them printed.
Yes. But
Brooke Schreier is actually on the web too. He can
point you.
sell you a copy.
Yeah. Well, for books like Applied Cryptography that you can find in Barnes & Noble,
Right.
for God's sake.
Right.
But
I don't know if you could take that out of the country, though. You may have to sell it to somebody here.
No, right. We're going to talk about this soon.
but if you're looking for other books like Number 30 Books, I just got a book from Amazon just last week called Primes in Programming, which is looking pretty good. But anyway, they're on the web, www.amazon.com. If you can't find books in your local bookstore, there you go. And besides, since they're on the web, they're out of state.
I think there's a...
Someone on Crypto in the past week or so was saying that when the new data book comes out, they'll be offering it for about 25% off list, and that they also have some other crypto books for discount.
Great.
Maybe able to find crypto books at Stacy's. They're about a mile away at Stevens Street. They have a good technical section.
One of the things that we may want to consider, if you're not on it already, is getting on the Mac Crypto list. It's a major domo list, which means you just put subscribe Mac-crypto in the subject or in the message of email message to majordomo@thumper.vmeng.com. So, and if you don't, we'll stick it up on the website that you all over it now, so you can subscribe.
No, we don't know what the website is that you're speaking of.
Oh, really? You know the piece of paper that's stuck on the door outside?
Okay,
It's there's a URL on it.
great.
And most everybody here who registered had to use the website to register, so it is.
knew where it was.
Does the Mac Crypto listserv have a digest mode?
Yeah, but I think you have to, the way, it's running on Majordomo and not Majordomo. When we put Majordomo, because people get mixed up. And it does do digest. I've never used it. I understand that to get a digest, you actually have to request them.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
In general, Mac Crypto won't generate much more than a message a day,
Oh, okay.
or hasn't in the past.
Hasn't in the past, say, 3 months.
So setting digest doesn't do much.
It's not like the
That's what
CypherPunks
today
list,
is.
Or eSpam.
which can overwhelm many low volume mail programs.
After today, however.
When I got back from 2 weeks vacation, I had 2,115 messages,
Yes,
All from CypherPunks?
mostly from CypherPunks.
mostly from CypherPunks and from Bob.
Yeah, if you want a good stress test of your mail program, I suggest that you subscribe to CypherPunks and Semper.fi. And make sure you get a unlimited hours account at your
And
ISP.
Evangelist.
Oh, and
I'd rather
Evangelist.
subscribe to eSpam and get my opinion on both.
But anyway, but we digress.
Yeah, let's throw Dave.
Okay. Okay, so when Bob asked me to do this, like day before yesterday?
Yeah.
I said, I have no idea what I'm going to talk about. Now, of course, I have an idea what I'm going to talk about. I said to Bob, I should call this the State of the Onion Address because there's a lot of layers to peel back here and many, many tiers involved. But actually, what I'd really like to talk about today, well, a couple of things. I'll just give you a quick overview. I'm going to talk a little bit about crypto APIs versus payloads and how it relates to the Mac crypto development history. And then I'm going to tell you a couple of little real-world stories about products that are out there now. And then I'm going to tell you a little humor item. And then I would really appreciate it if right before we all go to lunch, I could get everybody to gather like in the middle or down here somewhere, and we'll take a lunching cryptographers group photo for the web so that we can show people that there are actually faces behind all this stuff, If you don't want your face photographed, you can do like we used to do in the old CypherPunks days and, wear a mask or hold your hand up or something like that. But I'd like to get a, sorry, Vinny, body count. Anyway, so the basic dilemma, as I see it, and my involvement has been basically shepherding people together to get things done in the past. So I'm not going to get overly technical right now, but the basic dilemma here is: should we have a cryptography API for our product, or should we just rely on the payload of messages and just deal strictly with message blocks, message bodies, etc. Well, it's been 2 or 3 years beating my head against this now, and I've seen all the players involved in this market, especially in the Mac crypto area, and I've seen what kind of company support there is for crypto so far. I hope that's changing a lot because it hasn't been too good up until now. And I've seen what the technology is capable of doing and how badly it flops when it tries to do something that it can't do yet. So I'm coming up with a sort of personal philosophy that small is really beautiful here, and that maybe we shouldn't try and over-glorify this whole thing. And this may be a little bit controversial, but hey. One of the subtitles for my little talk here is give me an engine long enough and I'll move the world. And I'm going to argue very quickly, if I can, that maybe crypto APIs are not the best way to go, and maybe it's a really good idea to simply build enough intelligence into your programs so that you can recognize and parse encrypted message bodies and handle them. Now, I'm stepping a little bit outside the bounds of digital commerce here because business users and people who do electronic cash, e-cash, e-dollars kind of implementations will need much more robust systems than what I'm talking about. They probably will need APIs, but looking at basic Mac cryptography and messaging in particular in telecommunications, because that is one of the things that's going to drive all this. Let me make a few statements and then I'll welcome anybody to shoot them down as they want. In my humble opinion,
the focus should be on integrating crypto, in other words, raw, for example, PGP message bodies, into your application so that you can recognize the text so generated in your app. And the integration maybe should be done separately from the basic crypto package as was done with PGP. And this is partly because PGP is a terrific example of something that became extremely popular. It wasn't relying on any particular platform, and it was up to the people on the individual platforms to support it as best they could. And I think that even with the relative dearth of crypto stuff on the Mac, it's like Guy says we have 10% of the market, but it's the top 10%, and I think that's generally true. I mean, a lot of the crypto stuff on the Mac has been really nice, interface work. Partly because of the efforts of MCIP and also the efforts of a few usual suspects. So I think PGP was really successful because it was directed right at the payload, to coin a phrase if I am. And the payload is everything. I mean, the message body is self-contained and it travels, and when you see one, you know what to do with it. It's begin PGP signed message or begin PGP message, etc. So the strength of it is that PGP, that is, it doesn't particularly need to know about the message headers or the MIME stuff, although there is MIME development towards PGP now, of course. And PGP had no specific hooks in it for specific mailers except what people wanted to add on their own. So, I mean, in a sense, it's kind of a standalone product, but in another sense, it created a standard. So I think we do need better integration between crypto engines in applications, and mailers, text editors, web browsers, etc. And this kind of intercepts with the do we need crypto APIs issue. And I'm going to argue here that if we narrow the richness of applications, it could be advantageous. So, focusing on APIs, it becomes really difficult to control the payloads because you have a lot of proprietary work into it. But you get better overall leverage in the marketplace. I mean, that's one argument. You get more flexibility because there are many more things you can do with it. And you get less hassle from the regulating agencies, the TLAs, people who enforce ITAR, et cetera. People who focus on payloads because ASCII message blocks can be parsed by a wide variety of apps, editors, mailers, news programs, browsers, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. And it's virtually impossible to stop end users from encrypting their payloads. A pressure point on a company is much more effective if you're the NSA than it is on a million individual users. So in terms of restriction of the marketplace, which has been the historical way it's been going on, it's a lot easier for them to control us when we gather together into an identifiable target. So another weakness of the hooks in APIs is that these kinds of restrictions cause companies, for example, like Netscape or Apple, to compromise with weaker but more tightly integrated crypto, and I think PowerTalk is a good example of that. I mean, personally, I liked the concept, but I think it was a bit too tightly integrated for some people, and Apple tried to introduce a fairly complicated topic, making it simple, and it was done in a fairly weak way, so it didn't gain a lot of acceptance from the early adopters. So it's better, I think, to have strong cryptography and have it loosely integrated, and that's been kind of the historical thing, and we've come up with a lot of terrific scripting for Mac PGP and the various control panel devices like Marshall mentioned, MPGP and Mac PGP, MPGPC, sorry, Mac PGP control panel, which is a very nice unified integration of how to set up PGP and use it, and a couple of very nice little applications like Chainmail is a really nice way to use remailers, and those are still quite usable. So one of the reasons why I'm not so hot on crypto APIs right now, and I'm not going to discourage anybody from doing it, but just to give you an example of one of the things that I've been sort of peripherally involved in is this Eudora 3.0 PGP connection. About a year and a half ago, in an engineering meeting at Qualcomm, we discussed how we wanted to be able to extend Eudora, and I was just there as a consultant. And it was decided that Qualcomm really did want to have secure messaging, of course, and they really did not want to have a lot of problems with the government. So they wanted some way to keep the application itself crypto neutral, and they thought, well, we'll build this architecture and we'll allow plugins. And there's one that currently does not exist. And it really doesn't exist quite well, actually. It doesn't function at all by clicking a single button. And all joking aside, I mean, it really is a nice way to put it into an application like that. Of course, it has the drawbacks that I've just outlined in terms of strength and that sort of thing. But right now, the API is much more directed towards supporting scripting, OS scripting. So there's still a lot of Apple scripts, Apple events that are going back and forth between Mac PGP and Eudora equipped with this non-existent plugin. So I'm diverging completely from what I was going to do here, but that's good. Let me just talk really briefly about the advantages and the disadvantages of crypto APIs, and I'll start with the advantages, of which there are two that I can identify. And I'd like to give proper credit to Tim May for really thinking up all this stuff. Tim May is one of the original 3 CypherPunks. And, yeah, right. Well, I know Tim uses a PowerBook, so I'm sure that was his tongue-in-cheek way of saying things.
But we digress.
Color of tongue to be omitted here. Many users, especially new users, and especially people, for example, who come to the Mac with not a lot of background in computers, much less crypto stuff, they want an all-in-one way of doing things. They love it when Claris comes out with some integrated way to throw up a home page. Fantastic. That's a real advantage. So turnkey programs like that with crypto APIs written specifically for their browsers will increase the number of crypto users, and that is a very significant advantage, I admit. APIs, crypto APIs, do affect digital commerce. Robust systems with a widespread number of transaction points need robust hooks into the internals of what's going on with the crypto. There's no doubt about that. So when I say you don't necessarily need a crypto API, I'm really not talking about eCash implementations or anything like that. APIs that deal with digital commerce also can't really rely on macros and scripts because they're just too error prone. I mean, anybody who's used Mac PGP Kit with version 2.x of Eudora knows that there are various errors that occur. I mean, there are timeouts with Apple events and things like that. So it's just not a good, robust way to do business. However, there are some disadvantages to crypto APIs, and I'll just throw out a couple here. Let's say, for example, you've got a lot of new users, and they hear about this fantastic World Wide Web browser called Pilot version 4 with new, improved 51-bit cryptography. They at least get into the habit of using crypto, and later they move up to external crypto, specific products and things like that. But if Pilot offers NSA-approved crypto via their API, then external packages should still be able to get at the message blocks, and that's not always the case. Persons here who are more expert on SSL and SHTTP, which are the two secure web protocols, will probably contradict me on that, but that's my impression so far. Another disadvantage is that crypto APIs separate the development of strong crypto from the browsers and mailer, etc. development. In other words, you need to dedicate somebody. So if this company, Pilot, integrates crypto, they're in the loop on these crypto developments, and maybe it's actually better if they weren't, because there are people out there who may do it better than they. and there's no offense at all intended here towards companies like Netscape. Crypto APIs eliminate a reason for controlling distribution and export, because they make it possible to, write hooks to message payloads, and those are difficult to control. They use the principle of distributed systems, which is fine, but it's still a disadvantage in terms of widespread use. Crypto APIs somewhat suppress independent development, which I think equals the best cryptography. I mean, Phil did what he did with the original PGP really in his room, and very quickly, by the way. Okay, so skipping down here a little bit, the basic structure of all internet communications is ASCII. I mean, that's something that everybody can work with. But business users and people who do financial cryptography need richer data structures and not key escrow. So they can really work out separate plans if they need to and have their own APIs. And pretty much finally here, I think that the focus on payloads and not APIs makes it more efficient to use. It makes for more efficient use of your programming resources. It's much more of a grassroots approach, and that's been relatively successful in a lot of ways on the Mac platform, where crypto is concerned. And then finally, the message payloads are very well suited for lots of common everyday uses: telecommunications, digital signatures, encrypted blocks of text, etc. Like I said before, PowerTalk and its ilk may be a little bit too built in. Okay, so that's pretty much all I want to say about that. Let me say that there are a couple of things that really need doing on the Mac, and they've been mentioned, but I'll just summarize them. First of all, we don't have any really good Mac-based remailers. That's really important. We need more Mac libraries. That's obvious. A lot of porting of libraries to the Mac. When everybody looked at Bill's slides here, they could see that not a lot of them were supporting the Mac, and that needs to be changed. There's also a lack of cryptanalytical tools on the Macintosh, and that's a bit unfortunate, because that's the sort of thing that draws people into writing cryptography stuff, is getting interested in how to break it. And I'm not suggesting that we get all hacky about the thing, but I think it would be a really cool thing if somebody were to write a basic application for doing simple cryptanalysis to illustrate it for people. And finally, just because I really like the little thing, I really think there should be some kind of cryptography done for the Newton. I mean, it's a really fantastic little computer. I'm really in love with my little 130, and now that I'm starting to use it to do email and web stuff, I'm pretty excited about it. It makes it very convenient to bring my work with me, and I'm really frustrated by the fact that I can't encrypt when sending mail from my Newton. So let me throw in a little plug here for the PGP help team, which I started a couple of years ago and is still going strong. There are a lot of people out there who need help with PGP, maybe some of you, and I'd like to encourage anyone here who wants to know more about it to send email to the address crypto@lsd.com, and I will send information back on that. And there are lots of URLs. I have a few pages up on the well that you can use to ask a question to the PGP help team and stuff like that. So I hope that everybody does that. And if anybody here doesn't have the latest copy of Zig's Mac PGP FAT 2.6.3 version 161, we have tested it extensively now. It's almost guaranteed not to blow up in your cargo hold. So you can feel free to get a copy from me. I have a README first, just like anybody who's sensible should. I'd like to throw in a little thing before I get you all together for a photograph here, which actually means raising yourself up out of your chairs on the way to lunch. But I wanted to read out something that I saw recently. I found it rather amusing, and I thought it would be a good segue into lunch. It's a password guidelines version 2.2 beta. Okay. And it says, at the top it says, passwords must conform to at least 21 of the following 20 attributes. Minimum length, 8 characters. 2, not in any known dictionary. 3, no word or phrase bearing any connection to the holder. 4, containing no characters in the ASCII character set. 5, no characters typable on a Sun Type 5 keyboard. Some of you will get that somewhere. 6, no subset of one character or more must have appeared on Usenet News, DevMem, Rand 3, or the King James Bible version 0.1 alpha. 7, it must be quantum electrodynamically secure. In other words, it must automatically change if observed a la Heisenberg to protect against packet sniffers. 8, the binary representation must not contain any of the sequences 00, 01, 10, 11, commonly known about in hacker circles. 9, it must be provably different from all other passwords on the internet. 10, it not be representable in any human language or written script. Number 11, not decryptable by exhaustive application of possible one-time pads. Number 12, changed prior to each use. Number 13, resistant to revelation under threat of rubber hosing. 14, contain DNA data from tissue samples of at least 3 vital organs. Number 15, incontrovertible by O.J. Simpson's lawyers. Number 16, undecodable by virtue of application of a zero-way hash function. Number 17, odorless, silent, invisible, tasteless, weightless, shapeless, lacking form, and chemically inert. Number 18, it must contain nonlinear random S boxes without a backdoor. And number 19, self-escrowable to enable authorities to capture kiddie porn baddies but not crypto-anarchic goodies. We'll only decode it with a court order, honest. And finally, 20, color-capable passwords must use a minimum 64-bit palette. Thank you very much for listening.
I was wondering how we were.
Macintosh technology.
Well, I have you on video right now, so beamed right into Janet.
We're actually doing this with a spot